This is the Recovery Lab.
Here we dive deep into the struggles, victories, and hope that stem from recovery.
No shame, no judgment, just truth, grace, and inspiration.
Let's walk this road together.
All right, guys, welcome back to Recovery Lab. This is episode 138. I'm David Sugg. I'm here with my co-host, Daniel Anderson, who doesn't have a mic today. We're missing Brynn. Brynn is home with a sick family. I was out last week. I was sick. The bugs are going around, man. Y'all wash your hands. You got to take care of yourself. Health is wealth.
Season.
Yeah,
Yes.
you got to take. I'm here this week, Daniel, as well, with the team from Harbor House. I'm super pumped to have y'all in because y'all got a lot to talk about. But also, when I get to sit with people who unknowingly have helped me in my life. My wife went through Harbor House almost 11 years ago. She went through twice. She got it the second time. But I wouldn't be here today without her being a part of my life, and we wouldn't have the wonderful life that we have without the work that y'all are continuing to do. Harbor House has been around for a long time, over 50 years. We were talking about it before, and to sit down and talk to you guys about what you got going on now is super exciting because you are still changing lives. You are still helping, and also you still give the recovery world something to participate in. The people who aren't in your doors are still kind of drawn to the work that y'all are doing and keeping us engaged, which is really closing the circle of 12-step work. Like, that's really the deal. If the circle doesn't close, we don't exist. So I appreciate y'all doing what you're doing to let us stay engaged and to be here and talk about it. I'm going to let you guys introduce yourselves, talk about who you are and what you do at Harbor House.
Y'all want me to start?
Go for
Okay,
it.
so I'm the first one. I am Dedria Black, and I am the executive director for Harbor House. I've only been there a very short time. I started September 16th of 2024, so I'm still the new kid on the block.
Yeah.
And so I'm Jacqueline Lampley, and I've been at Harbor House since 1988. So I guess that's about, 36 years?
30.
Yeah.
And so I serve as the assistant executive director.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I'm here, I guess, with two hats. So I'm Chris Bates. I've been on the board at Harbor House for 8 or 9 years, I think. And also as someone who is not an alumni of Harbor House, but am just surrounded by people that are as a person in recovery myself. And so it's just an incredible place, an incredible mission.
Yeah. Yeah. And tell us what's the past couple of years. Harbor House has gone through some growth. Y'all are out. Tell me your location, who you primarily serve, and what what's your average length of stay and program kind of looks like.
Okay, so I'll start with that. We're on at 5354 I-55 South, Frontage Road East.
Okay.
So we're around that Frontage Road. We border Byram and Jackson, so we're on the kind of the border of both of those. We have a Jackson address, Byram zip code. Don't ask me how that happened, but it's pretty confusing. We have about a 40-acre campus now, but we serve males and females ages 18 and older. We serve everything from all kinds of substance abuse. We also do co-occurring disorders as well. We have found that over the years it's evolved. I think Harbor House primarily started out serving alcoholics and then but as you know, now when you look into the drug culture and the system, that you don't find a lot of people coming in just for substance abuse. They have a co-occurring mental health disorder as well. So we do serve co-occurring disorders. We have a high-intensity program, 3.5. We have a transitional program. We also have peer support. We have an MAT program, medication-assisted therapy. And did I leave anything out, Miss Jackie?
That's about it.
That's about it.
Okay.
And the VA program.
Yes,
That's the
and
other big one.
we have a VA program on site as well.
Okay. Awesome. Miss Jackie, what have you seen change since you've been there? You've been there a long time. You've seen you mentioned kind of starting out with just alcoholics, and now you're going all the way into maybe some veteran assistance,
Right.
MAT. You've seen a lot of different things. Tell me about what it's been to be able to witness the transitions and kind of what you've used
So
to
I
see.
guess I guess for me the first major transition is moving from the buildings where we started. So we started originally on West Capitol Street, And it was 1019 West Capitol Street, right across from Stew Pot there in an old building. And then our board of directors at that time, Chris wasn't on the board, but we had people like Earl Jones that was on the board. I can't think of some of the other people names, but well, Tommy Marshall joined the board. Barry Burks, our current board members, joined the board when we was on West Capitol Street. But the transformation of going from those buildings where Harbor House was originally started in 1973, and then the women's facility was out in Flowood on Flowood Drive. There in a 2-story house, and I think we leased the building from the city of Jackson for $1 a year and whatnot. So in 2000, our board had the vision of, hey, you know, we need to grow the program. We need to get out of these buildings. We need to come together. So they found the building in South Jackson where we are now. And amazingly enough, I had worked at that building on the Jackson Recovery Center, and I was like, wow, I'm not going to do private. I'm going to go to the nonprofit. And so decided to apply at Harbor House and got the position as a counselor. But so in 2000, we moved in that building, and the program has just taken off ever since. And so that's one of the major transitions that I've seen since being at Harbor House, is just having the ability to be in those buildings on that campus and whatnot.
Yeah, I've had a couple of I don't know if they're seminars or what you call them, but the local recovery community sometimes host events out at y'all's lake house.
Right.
And that was an addition. I don't know. The first time I went out there was probably 4 or 5 years ago, but it's a really beautiful piece of land, a lot of parking, a lot of great. The building itself's got a lot of room for people to give presentations and talks and little conferences. Y'all are still using that building for that purpose, correct?
We do. So that building, I think we acquired that property probably in
6 years ago?
Right.
Yeah, that's about right.
2018, 17, 16, something like that. But we acquired that property, and so we use it as our admissions office. So when people come to be admitted, they come to that building. And also our medical director, Dr. Randy Easterlin, he's there. He's housed there, and it serves as our MAT kind of headquarters. And whatnot, with the coordinator there too. Whatnot.
Hey, Chris, you served on the board for how long?
It's been about 8 or 9 years.
What was your experience like doing that?
You know, the thing that I guess attracted me to being able to work with, you mentioned some of the other board members, and Barry Burks and I've been dear friends in recovery for a long time, as you know. And he said, look, we've got a spot, want your help. And what attracted me about that is that Harbor House serves the least of it. It's probably the best way I know how to describe that from a layman's standpoint. So people that are affected by drugs, alcohol, co-occurring disorders, Dedria, as you were talking about, that often can't get help otherwise. You know, can't get help anywhere else because they don't have insurance, because private insurance, because they don't have, resources, or maybe they've totally, lost connection with family or whatever the case may be, and they've got nowhere else to turn, and so knowing that was the primary population that was being taken care of for men and women, and being able to be a part of that. Now, when I stepped on, as a board member, I really had no idea of the logistics, of the budget, of anything else. I just knew that's what the mission was. And gosh, I guess it was Mr. Fowler, Jimmy Fowler, that had donated the proceeds to make the main building and a lot of the current campus happen. Jackie, with that transition that you talked about. So that's just one, David, of untold countless numbers of lives over these 53 years, that just, bottom line, impact people that need help the most. That suffer from the malady that we have. And that's what's incredible about it.
Yeah. That's cool. So your primary source of growth is mainly through donations. A lot of people are donating a lot of money. Are there any drivers? Are there any big events that y'all do? How are you getting awareness to kind of keep that thing going? How does that work?
Well, right now, we haven't really restarted the kind of fundraising. I think COVID changed that for a lot of nonprofits.
Mhm.
Everything just kind of paused. We are funded through DMH and the VA, so we primarily are funded through government grants.
Okay.
We do plan to start back, fundraising, but again, COVID, I think, hit the United States. It wasn't just Harbor House. It wasn't just Mississippi. I think across the country,
Yeah.
people just stopped donating because things were just uncertain.
Mhm.
And so we are really hoping to get back, connect back to our donors, foster new relationships with donors because the mission is really critical. And for a nonprofit, one of the most valuable assets you can have is unrestricted funds. That way we can do things for clients that's not funded necessarily through grant money.
Hmm.
So we really, as a nonprofit, you really need to have kind of that. It's almost like an emergency fund in your pocket for unforeseen things that may happen.
What sort of things would unrestricted funds allow y'all to do that you're not doing?
I mean, we can do things such as improvement on the building, things such of that nature. Right now, our funding is fee for service, what they
Mhm.
call fee for service, which means we're paid by beds. So you come in, there's a purchase amount of the bed. So we get paid based off capacity. Unrestricted funds is just what it says. Unrestricted, we can utilize it for anything, supplies, staffing, salaries,
Mhm.
anything like that. And with government grants, it's pretty.
They come with strings. They
Yeah, they
want you
come
to do
with
a
strings,
thing a
yeah.
certain way and do it in this timeline to
Mhm.
this certain demographic of people. If it's not
Right.
that, then you might not get it the second time.
Or they may cut
They may
the
cut
next
it.
time,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
But one of the awesome ways that we could use, donation is for client care medications.
Mhm,
So we
medication.
see, like Chris said, we see clients come in that are homeless that don't have clothes. So Miss Black, oftentimes, I'm saying, hey, can you go to Walmart and grab some jogging pants or some underwear and
Mhm.
socks and just recently some tennis shoes and shower shoes.
Size
that-
13, by the way.
13, yes, that
It's funny,
we
I had
needed.
somebody looking for size 13 shoes the other day. It's hard to get those.
It's hard to
It
get
is.
them.
It is. So, unrestricted funds will allow us to do that for patients. They come in, and in order to go to the next step, sometimes they need, all the time, they need their ID. So, Harbor House is
Mhm.
having to foot the bill, to get them their ID,
Okay.
things of that nature.
Yeah, one of our hopes in doing Recovery Lab is to kind of bring in this group of Central Mississippi providers, whether they're treatment centers, sober living providers, advocates like Danny started doing with Recovery Lab almost 2.5 years ago, and bring them together and kind of have a little bit more of a conversation about what's needed and what's going on for issues like this. And just in case y'all probably already know, but Nick over at Shower Power, the new executive
Right.
director at Shower Power,
Mhm.
is super excited to be providing
Mhm.
birth certificates and IDs for
Right.
people. But y'all still got to get over there. You still
Right.
got to
Right.
do it. That still
Right.
causes transportation. You got to have a van.
Mhm.
They can't just walk from Byram to downtown Jackson to do it.
can't.
So it's still, although those resources are available and they're
Mhm.
willing to do it, you still got to make that happen. The
Right.
peanut butter and the
Right.
jelly got to do the thing.
And
Right.
power
Yeah.
and Shower Power has been a wonderful partner with us. They send, referrals and
Mhm.
whatnot. And we have had people to say, hey, Miss Jackie, can you call them so I can get my birth certificate, and
Mhm.
whatnot. And they have been very responsive.
Yeah.
And we also would like to see when our clients leave, we always talk about dignity. And so, as an executive director, when I walk out and see someone waiting for their ride and they have all these garbage bags with their things in them, it just does something to you. They've stood the test of time. They've gone through the treatment. They've reached their milestones, and then at the end of their journey and going to the next phase to pack their things into trash bags. It seems like a small thing, but it's really not.
Yeah.
It's for them to be able to leave with some dignity, to have some decent, maybe luggage, duffel bags, those sorts of things.
Where are most of your clients going when they graduate? If they're coming in, they don't have a place to live. If they don't come in with a lot of clothes, a lot of food, something tells me they're going to leave with a solution on how to stay sober, but they might not have a lot more stuff than that.
Mhm.
Where are they going, and what are they leaving with?
Well, we have several kind of resources in the community. One of our biggest partners is Sober Living. That's one of the transitional spaces that we utilize. Of course, it's not always enough. Transitional living, the supply does not meet the demand, of course. We have quite a few homeless clients. Like right now, I think we're at about 63 of the clients that are currently at Harbor House are homeless.
Mhm.
So discharge plan is really important. We want to start planning a lot earlier because the thing with sober living, they have to have income within about 2 weeks. I think they give them, once they get to sober living, to get a job. And let's kind of be real. You're getting out straight out of treatment. You may not have any work experience or gaps, big gaps that you can't explain. So getting a job within a 2-week span, even for us, it takes a long time. You go through the application, do the interview,
Absolutely.
wait for them to finish all the other interviews, and then call you back.
Wait for your
maybe.
check.
And then you have to wait for your
Yeah.
check. So we foresee that that's going to be a huge barrier because of the homeless population is growing and the sober livings, they're just at capacity.
So Grace House
Mhm.
for women's have been a huge
Yes.
lifesaver for our patients. And so, those partnerships like Stew Pot, Matt's House, Billy Broomfield House, that we have relationships with those.
Vocational rehab is
Yeah.
a big
Right.
part of kind of that transitional
Mm-hmm.
process.
Yeah.
And Dedria mentioned the 3.1 program. So that's the step down. That's you guys can describe
Go
it a whole
ahead.
lot better than I can. Again, mine's a layman's term. But that's a step down, so where they're still there under the care and under the umbrella of Harbor House, but they're beginning a part-time job. They're beginning, it's that transitional process. And you were talking about funding and expansion and those types of things. And I know, Jackie, we've talked for years, and Dedria, I know you're a big fan of the opportunity to expand that as well, so that, David, it's more the continuity of care. So you're going from a 60 or even a 90-day inpatient, and you're not going from that to headed out.
Right.
So that you're going to the old days of what we called the halfway house,
Right.
kind of setting, but you're still
three-quarter
under
way
the roof
house.
at Harbor House,
Yeah.
right? So that's something that I know as a board and as staff leadership we've talked about, loving to see the expansion of that continue over time, so that it's a step down. So maybe you've already got, by the time you go to a sober living, you've already got the first couple of checks in hand, and you're the ball's rolling. So it's not, the life parts aren't so difficult if you actually are trying to stay sober.
Tell me what your program kind of consists of. When somebody comes in from the door on intake, their first couple of weeks to whenever they leave, what are they going through? What's y'all's primary mode of therapy?
So we're looking at when they first come in, they are going through the admission process. So
Do y'all detox there? They need to come detox? How does that?
So Dr. Easterlin is responsible for all of the protocols when it comes to withdrawal management.
Okay.
And so it's been amazing to have him there, because where we used to send patients out for withdrawal management, he's there, very experienced, and he's been handling all of that.
Okay.
So once they go through the admission process, and then they transition over to the main campus, where they have their orientation. And orientation, too, starts over at the Lake House, which is our admissions office. But they come over to the main campus. They start another orientation with our CTs, which is our clinical techs. In the old days, they were house managers and whatnot. And then they start, they go on the unit. Then the next day, they start with the therapist.
Okay.
And they start the orientation process there. And from there, they kind of matriculate through groups, individual sessions, and whatnot. And we have a staff psychiatrist. Dr. Ava Patel is there 1 day a week. And so she has been a huge, I can't even describe what she has meant to the persons that's coming in with co-occurring, disorder. Because back in the day, if somebody came to treatment and they had dual diagnosed, which is what we call co-occurrent now, but oftentimes we couldn't keep those patients and whatnot. They was too severe to be there, and her coming in and doing therapy, putting them on the right medication, it's just led to a lot of people getting help where they would not have been able to get it.
Wow. Is y'all's treatment center, some are really grounded in the 12-step process. Some kind of use a 12-step process, but might do more of a spiritual leaning, or some just do more, sometimes like therapy and just psychology. Are y'all doing a blend, or is it more 12-step stuff? Tell me more about like what you're really relying on.
So we are basically 12 steps. We
Okay.
use 12-step facilitation and whatnot. And so we are grounded and rooted in the 12 steps.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
And y'all, I knew I've been out there in the past doing some 12-step work. Used to hear a lot of fifth steps out there. Used to go out there and carry some meetings out there. Are y'all still really bringing in outsiders from the 12-step community to carry?
We do.
Okay.
We rely on Paxton at the
Yeah.
AA Central Office. You
Shout
know,
out Paxton.
He was on here a couple weeks
Yeah.
ago.
Paxton. You know, you can't tell Kelly, but he's really my boyfriend.
Yeah.
And whatnot.
I think you might have mentioned that.
Yeah,
actually.
yeah, you know, he's really my boyfriend.
Yeah.
But so we rely on Paxton and the AA Central Office to, do a meeting schedule and whatnot. And so he and Randy, we work with them. And there was a time when we was in a kind of sticky situation with something about some cigarettes, and I said, Paxton, what you think I ought to do? And he said, well, I think, Jackie, I'll just let them figure it out on their own. Don't you get involved. And I said, okay, I'm going to take your advice.
Yeah.
But we love those guys, and they are really good partners with Harbor
So
House.
you're working with different groups, and then they network with y'all and might schedule and come out and carry meetings and carry some
do.
support to y'all.
They
Okay,
do.
awesome.
They do.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I mean, you talked about the Yana crew that was on here recently too. So the Harbor House vans roll up to Yana and go and take patients to outside meetings on a regular basis as well, which I think is tremendously important.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
I know sometimes that's how folks have found sponsors. Those types of things. So
Yeah.
I think the integration that you guys are doing with the 12-step community is very significant.
Yes, that's very important, because oftentimes, and I'm grateful for the podcast that you all are doing to, try to alleviate the stigma, because oftentimes families, when they get back home, they don't know anything about AA meetings, but the client haven't had that experience of the vans going to Yana or going to Swinging Bridge or wherever the meetings are. Georgetown, and they can say, "Hey, I went there and whatnot," and so I'm gonna, still continue to go once I get out of treatment. And that's the goal for us, is for them to be able to integrate and go back out in society.
And once people graduate and leave, y'all have a pretty intense continuing care outpatient program. Do you not? Like, graduates can come back on a Wednesday or Thursday.
Right.
Tell me more about what that aftercare program looks like. Is it still? Is y'all still doing it?
yeah.
Correct?
Yeah, actually, our facilities manager, Victor Griffin, he conducts that group, and it's people from the outside who have graduated. I mean, he's a pretty powerful, really rooted in his own recovery. So the clients, our current clients, as well as clients who have graduated, really respect Mr. Victor. He holds a very powerful group. He's really rooted in recovery. So yeah, we still do that on Wednesday nights.
So that's one day a week. Graduates and other people will come in and get some continued care.
Right.
Yes.
And
Gotcha.
Victor's a certified peer support specialist. And on the female side, the females don't actually come back in, but we have Sarah Settlers, who is a certified peer support specialist as well. And she's moving towards obtaining her PLPC.
Okay.
And Sarah comes out on
Mondays.
Tuesday
Is
nights.
it Tuesday?
Tuesday nights, and provide therapy to the recovery support to the female groups. And she's a certified yoga instructor, so Sarah may have them stretching and focusing on, all of the other domains of life.
Moving around.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, we tend to get sober and we get off the drugs and alcohol, and you kind of stretch and be like, all right, what am I going to do now? And like, you need to get moving. We got to go see the dentist, and we need to get our blood work done and all that stuff. So y'all are kind of complementing a lot of those needs, that kind of stuff.
Right.
That's awesome. What's the biggest challenge you're seeing right now with the population that's coming in to your facility?
Well, I think we have a few things. It's cycles. We go in cycles. There was a time back in the summer where we had a cycle of younger individuals in recovery. We're talking not even old enough to smoke a cigarette. So that brings challenges to the center because they smoke on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're dealing with an 18, 19-year-old
Mm-hmm.
early in their recovery, it's really difficult because their mindset is a lot different than some of our older clients. And then we go through a period of cycle where we have older adults. That's also a challenge because they come with chronic health conditions, just aging, the aging population, and it's really difficult. And then when you have the mixture of the two, it really,
Right.
it
It
just
starts to
becomes,
go down when that
yes,
happens.
because
Yeah.
you have the new school or
Yeah.
Gen Z versus,
The
I don't know,
baby
the baby boomers. We
Yeah.
got baby
Yeah.
boomers. We got about 5 generations, really,
Yeah.
of people in treatment. So when they get together, it's really, you have to really be skilled, I think, as a therapist, to be able to, and flexible enough to know what generation you're dealing with and what motivates that generation.
I
And
know
before,
for me,
go ahead.
for me, sometime when I look on the census and I see somebody was born in 2000, I have to remember, wow, we in 2000?
Right.
Yeah.
And that person now is old enough to, come into treatment.
Mm-hmm.
And so it
Or you
can be
look
challenging.
and see someone who's 70
Right.
on
Yeah.
the census, and
yeah.
it's like, so yeah.
We went to I bumped into you at the NARR meeting we had a couple weeks ago. And who's the fellow from the National Institute, Mississippi Institute of
What's his name?
Ron?
Ron from PHI.
From Ron from PHI. They've actually got a lot of funding right now for people between the ages of 16 and 24. They can give up. Do you already know about that?
Right, the TAY population. Yeah,
Yeah.
they
But keep
yeah,
that. You were talking about different age groups and have different needs and different things. But they've got a large amount. They can almost give like $3,000 to $2,500 a month for all kinds of stuff. So if y'all run across, y'all doing with 18 or older,
Right.
still there's a 6-year space in there between 18 and 24 where y'all might be able to use some of that.
Oh yeah, remember we had that young guy, and we had such a difficult time with discharge planning. I think his mom was deceased. He was
Right.
20, 21. Mom deceased, kind of burnt bridges,
Yeah.
and he was just a child, right out of high school type of deal. And discharge planning was very difficult because never been in the workforce, expecting him to go out, get a job, get an apartment. It just sometimes it can be a little,
Yeah.
deflating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, with the recovery houses that we deal with, sometimes people come in. They say we don't have money for this or that for rent or for membership to come in the house, and we describe to them kind of never mind the money it costs to pay for the rent. Like they got to have food, they got to get their
Right.
phone cut back on. They might need to get interview clothes. I mean, there's so many different things that when someone comes in a truly indigent state and they don't have anything, they put so much pressure on the other residents that are already
Right.
there. It's really like there's a lot of help more than just capital R rent that's needed. There's so much different stuff that's really going on. So yeah, it was cool to bump into you there and keep that in mind for people of that age group that might need funding. And the old timers are kind of funny. Like, yeah, when people are in their 60s and 70s and they've had enough and they're ready to do it, but they come with a whole other host of stuff. We've had a lot of trips to the doctors to take care of some of those folks.
And a lot of them are reflecting on end of life.
Mm-hmm.
We had one gentleman, he was late 60s, and just kind of reflecting on that end of life. I'm here now, and I've, spent a lot of time using, but I really want to get it right now. And so, we worked on him with, it's a one day at a time. We're not going to project. We're just going to keep it one day at a time.
Yeah, sometimes I've seen like people that are coming in when they're getting sober at a young age, there tends to be a lot of anger. And I was one of those. I was trying to get sober at a young age and it wasn't really happening. I go to treatment, I just get angrier and angrier. And there's just a lot of rebellion and anger. But I see now maybe I'm just more aware of it. But guys that kind of come in their like 30s, 40s, or 50s, they seem to have kind of this like depression of like,
Deflated.
oh my God, I've
Just
what?
deflated.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I wonder sometimes about like when someone comes into treatment, if somebody comes in angry, you try to kind of contain them and kind of talk them down off the ledge. But there's also a lot of work that needs to happen when somebody comes in deflated or just super depressed to kind of like help them realize like we're not done yet.
Right.
God's got a plan for your life. There's other stuff, there's other work to be done. When you're working with some of the older folks, and I say older, I mean anybody above the age of 30 or 40 that might have got grown kids that don't talk to them anymore, have
Right.
lost jobs. Are y'all seeing some of that work that needs to be done kind of to get them kind of lifted back up into a place of hope?
And I think one of the things that people, not in this space, whether they've been in recovery or working with individuals, they don't understand there are underlying factors that goes with addiction. When you have a young kid coming in, you think about, is this a kid who just started using with his friends and he accidentally got addicted? Or is this a young man who's suffering from trauma? We see so much trauma. And then when you get a person who's 40 years old and they've gone through all these years of trauma that's never been unpacked, it's hard to unpack that. We're a 30-day program, 30 to 90 days, so to get them to that space is really difficult. But I think a lot of people on the outside don't understand how trauma has played a huge role in addiction. I think a lot of times they just think, oh, they made, poor choices or they was with the wrong crowd. But they don't, there's a story behind every addiction, a story behind it. And now people don't understand that story, but you'd be surprised at how many we're seeing a lot of men now. They think trauma only belongs to women a lot of times. We know there's sexual abuse, there's sex trafficking, there's domestic violence. They suffer the exact same trauma. Domestic violence, sexual abuse, trafficking, we've had those individuals and men as well.
Dedria, that's why I know one of your big focuses lately in your leadership direction for the organization is deeper into trauma-informed therapy. And in our last board meeting, you were talking to the board a lot more about the importance of that as a primary modality, right, in addressing what it is you just described, because we've all got trauma.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it was my turtle died, or maybe it was, and I said that very tongue-in-cheek, or maybe it was any of the things that you just described, Dedria, or more. And so everybody's trauma is what it is. We all come from wherever we come from, and it's real to me, it's real to you.
Yeah.
And so I love seeing that Harbor House is adopting even more deeply than has been the case, seeing people for that and meeting them where they need to be, because you kind of like you said, David, you have to deal with that. That's got to be, Dedria, you said it's got to be unpacked at some point, or it's just going to continue to be, part of it. Yes, the steps are an answer and a pathway from that and everything, but it doesn't resolve everything that an individual has been through or at some point needs to address.
From a therapeutic kind of like mechanics of it, how do you get somebody who comes in, they're in there for week one, they've done their detox, they've safely withdrawn from medication, now they're back, they're kind of in group, but you don't really know what's going on. You don't know, you're not going to find out everything about them. How do you begin to kind of draw that out to get them the most benefit from the short amount of time they have?
So that's when the therapists start with the individual sessions and whatnot. We have a co-occurrence specialist there, Brett Patterson, who, they meet with Brett and he started to do some assessments on them. And, hopefully they are forthcoming. And Brett is a very gentle soul. He has a way of just kind of pulling things out, for a lack of a better word. He's very therapeutic with the person and very therapeutic, gentle. And so I think people start opening up. And people, I think genuinely, when they come in, they want help. They feel that if it's a safe place, then I can share. And especially if they know that it is a no judgment zone, and they can start to unpack what's going on.
And most of them just start getting it out. Do you have a lot of folks that just come in there and don't want to participate? They're just are obviously there for 3 hots and a cot, trying to do some time, nudge from the judge kind of thing.
They do.
Of course,
They
yes,
do.
we
It happens, yeah.
Yeah, it does. And it's still, regardless they're there, we know the substance abuse is still there. So what we're hoping is it's going to click at in a lesson, in a group. So they may initially start out, oh, I'm homeless, it's cold outside. Let me go to Harbor House and get in there. And we're hoping once they get through those doors that something is going to click, whether it's Mr. Benny, he's one of our peer support specialists, whether it's Mr. Victor or at one of their counsel or even one of their peers who's graduating. We're hoping that they'll catch something that'll get them moving past that 3 hots and a cot mentality. But some are just going to do that. Some are there because the probation officer told them, you go here, you go to jail. So, but regardless to why they come through the doors, we're hoping that once they get through there, that something is going to click, even if it's a small thing. As long as it gets them thinking about it, that's the best that we can hope for some of those individuals.
And I always count it just for that day.
Mhm.
They're safe.
Right.
They're safe.
It's a win.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a
Mhm.
win.
That's a win.
They're
And
in
if
a
they don't
safe.
go ASA,
Right.
if they don't leave before their time is up, that's a win. Every day that they stay, even if they're not engaged, every day that they stay there and they're exposed to what we have to offer, it's a win.
Yeah, absolutely. What do y'all got planned for this year? Any stuff coming up? Any changes you're making, or any
Oh, God.
any drives, anything going on that you're excited about, or maybe
So-
fearful of, and you need help from our network, our community to pitch in?
So, of course, we have accreditation. We are accredited by CARF, which is the Commission on Rehab Facilities, Rehabilitation Facilities. So, and the VA is in the window of accreditation. So we're working diligently to make sure that we're conforming to all standards and whatnot. And, and that's important when you do the kind of work that we do. You have to stay in compliance. And so we're making sure that building is up to codes and whatnot, and all of the SOPs, we are, following them. So, for me in my world, just accreditation.
Yeah, she's our compliance guru.
Okay.
But
Get right.
on the
Yeah.
operational,
That's right. They get right.
Yeah.
on the operational side, you've heard the term trauma-informed care. And, we at Harbor House have made the commitment to do a total transformation, not just, use it as a catchphrase. It's the buzzword of the week. But for us, building a trauma-informed system of care includes for our employees as well. You carry this work. It's a heavy load. We have our CTs that's there 24/7 with our clients. We have our clinicians who are hearing their stories, who's dealing with their trauma. So we've made the conscious decision, we've talked to the board, to truly transform our organization, not just trauma-informed practices for the people we serve, but trauma-informed practices for the people who serve those people, which is our employees. So that's a big, huge change for Harbor House because it's going to involve us changing everything we do, policies, practices, principles. Everything is going to have to follow that. That includes for our employees because we want to foster a psychologically safe environment, not just for our clients, but for our staff as well, because a lot of them may be in recovery. Many of them may be suffering from trauma. People in recovery are not the only ones who may be facing homelessness or who's facing, these issues that we deal with our clients. So we want to make sure that our organization is one that recognizes trauma not just in the people we serve, but in the people who serve those people, which is our employees. So that's a huge undertaking for a nonprofit because it's going to require a huge paradigm shift for us, a lot of work. They already complaining about it because it's we have to write, we rewriting every policy, making sure it's trauma informed. We writing every SOP. We're redoing the whole infrastructure to make sure we are truly trauma informed.
Yeah. I guess we hear the trauma. I from my recovery work that I've done personally, I'm around it enough that I kind of have a layman's understanding of kind of what trauma is and kind of how it fuels addiction, how it fuels separation. But can you kind of describe to maybe some of the people who are not or that are like me that don't really know a whole lot about it, how does trauma affect? How are we describing trauma, and what does it do to kind of to create or to foster alcoholism?
So, everybody comes from different households. And so, what happened in my house may not have happened it may not happen in your house on the same way, so I come from a home where I'm an only child. So, I got all the whoopings, and so there was
Me
no
too.
there was no
A
siblings
lot of numbers, you got every one of
right.
them. Yeah.
There was no siblings to say, okay, she did it, I did it.
Yeah.
If the cookie got stole out the cookie
They
jar,
know
I
it was
did
you.
it,
Yeah.
and whatnot. And so, so looking back on my own childhood, some of the whoopings that I got, I was like, y'all really, that was pretty
Yeah.
traumatic. So just trying to give everybody that comes in an opportunity to share what is important to them. Like I said, what is trauma to me may not be trauma to you. And so Ms. Black is trying to impress upon the staff, we don't want to re-traumatize.
Mhm.
We don't want somebody to go through the line there at the cafeteria and the cook say, you can't have that. It's a way to say, you can maybe have some more once everybody has been served and whatnot. So, just looking at not re-traumatizing people, how I communicate a message to you,
Mhm.
and not, talk to you, not talk at you. Uh, from our job descriptions, Ms. Black is rewriting those to, be more trauma informed. And so just the whole gamut of
Right. And I think one of the things for trauma informed care is you assume everyone that comes through our doors have suffered some type of
right.
trauma. And it changes the way you
Yeah.
interact with them. You assume that same thing with staff.
Mhm.
But when someone walks through those doors, we assume that they've been through some type of trauma. So you have to be very intentional about your interactions, your language, and those sorts of things. And that's kind of what trauma informed care is all about. You assume all of these individuals have experienced some type of trauma. So, as the practitioner or as the employee, you have to be very intentional in the way you interact. I think about the military, and we've seen an influx of younger veterans in the system, which you would have never seen before. I mean, younger veterans suffering from PTSD, suffering from these mental health disorders. And I think about when I went through boot camp and the way it was, the yelling, the screaming, the degrading, those sorts of things. That's trauma. And you see this younger generation going in, a lot of them have these underlying issues, and going into that type of environment is not safe. So it plays out in the military, they end up discharged. So we want to make sure that we don't have an environment which will potentially re-traumatize that confrontation, yelling, things like that. There's a way to de-escalate an individual. And we have to always make sure we're being respectful and that we maintain the dignity of our clients.
Tell me more about the work you're doing with veterans, how they're coming to you, what state they're like, how does a veteran find you, and then what do they do once they're there?
So with our veteran program, we don't provide their therapy.
Okay.
We provide the housing, the food, and those sorts of things. They have their own health techs, but we do have a contract with the VA for residential. So a lot of times we'll get a veteran over in our regular 3.5. And one of the things we do, all the staff goes through a veteran orientation. It's part of their onboarding to talk about military culture and those sorts of things, because it's a whole nother, they bring a whole set of challenges
Right.
that you don't see in your regular population. The military culture, the language that's used, and just really one of the things I remember being in California, and we had a veterans court. And one of the things trying to teach clinician, the first thing you say to a veteran is thank you for your service. You don't dive right into, well, tell me about your childhood, although the first thing you do is acknowledge, who they are. And that's that's trauma informed, acknowledging who the clients are in that moment, not who we think they're going to be after 30 days or 60 days or, things like that.
Interesting. So they're coming to you from the VA itself, and most of their therapy is being provided by the VA, and y'all are kind of taking care of their housing, taking care of getting them to and from where they need to go.
right.
How long are the vets there with you?
Oh, their program is a lot longer than ours. I don't even know if they have a time limit, because we see they have two programs. They have the primary substance abuse, and then they have a trauma program. So it's two separate groups, in there, but we've seen, for instance, there's a client there that we've seen there a few times since I've been there, so I don't think they have a kind of limit. I think they just come, but
Yeah.
yeah, we still interact with them. They're interesting.
Speaking of
group.
the time limits, we know there's data out on like the length of inpatient treatment. You know, over 30 days, there's a success rate. Over 60 days, the success rate continues. 90 days, it gets even more. What do you think about for the non-VA, for the people who are just coming in, or you're actually offering every service you have available? How do you feel like the 30-day to 60-day is how successful is that? Do you wish you could go longer? And if so, what's stopping y'all from doing it?
Well, of course, you always want longer with a client. You don't want to unpack something and then send them on
Go.
their way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
go. We done pulled that Band-Aid off, and now we're going to send you somewhere else. We would love to be able to work with our clients a lot longer. Unfortunately, when we do their assessment, there's this thing called the level of care assessment, the ASAM, and that's the criteria we base their level of care on. So if Chris comes in, for instance, he's scores meets the criteria for 3.5, which is our primary program, and then we reassess every 2 weeks. Once they are no longer on that 3.5 level, then we have to transition them. That's just kind of the nature of the beast, these assessment tools. But there's been times where we know they need longer, or now we can always build a business case for it. We may say, okay, yeah, we know they score for a 3.1. However, here's the clinical justification. This client has done this. We feel like he'll do well this. So there is a way sometimes where we can make a phone call. We can, long as we can justify it, we can keep them longer. But the average stay is between 30 and I would say 45 days.
And y'all feel like you're making some good breakthroughs and having a good success rate with that time frame?
We do. We
Good.
wish we could just keep hands on them a little longer. We've been talking about being able to bridge the gap between treatment and permanent housing. There's this huge gap there. It's like they finish with us and we need to get them to permanent housing, and there's this big hole right there. So
Tell me what permanent housing means to you.
permanent housing is normally this is what's going to be my home. This is where I'm going to, where I live is my permanent housing. So it's not a place that's temporary for them. This is not a place that, oh, in 3 months you're going to have to move, or when funding runs out you're going to have to move. This is my permanent home. This is where I'm going to be. This is where I'm going to build my memories, my life. That's permanent housing for us. But there's a huge gap between that because there's so many barriers from income to those sorts of things to get them to permanent housing. And as you know, Jackson, we serve the whole state of Mississippi, but Hinds County is kind of our catchment area. And as you've seen, the homeless crisis is growing in Jackson, so there's just not enough housing right now. So that is a huge worry for me, for Miss Jackie. We talk about this every single day, worrying about where we're going to send them to. We're sending them back into the community, or we're going to send them to a shelter. It's just, it's those things that just really keep you up at night.
Yeah,
And oftentimes, when sober living houses are full, a lot of Oxford houses are full, and we can't get them in, then we have to do that, level of care and that some of that justification. You don't want to send them back to a family environment that's there's still drug and alcohol use going on, because the chances of relapse is going to be very high at that point.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, if somebody there has participated in their trauma and then now is going to re-engage with that, and then they're going to
Right.
find a solution in drugs or alcohol, the chances are not good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I went on a run this morning. I ran past UMMC, and there were 3 people sleeping under wet blankets, and about 5 of them all huddled up in the bus stop. And I think Jackson kind of gets poo-pooed on sometimes because it's got UMMC and it's got treatment centers, it's got the VA, and so for all over the state of Mississippi, people are coming here for those amenities and for those resources, and they do whatever they're supposed to do for the 2 weeks or 3 weeks or a month. They get the service, but then there's not kind of a follow-up, and they're just, you're done. You got bandaged up, you had a bandage, whatever it is, now you're on your own, and they just don't have the life skills. That's one of the things that we see from people who have really been like either institutionalized because they've been locked up or they're institutionalized because they've been on the streets for so long. Just putting them in like a really domestic situation, like, hey, wash your clothes, lock the door, turn off the lights, is like, that's just beyond. They just don't have any experience even really doing that on a day-to-day basis. Remember, I couldn't walk out of the house. My mom telling me, turn off the lights,
Close the door.
close the door. But some of them just don't even, because they've been living in houses with no lights and, no door, whatever. They've just been doing it for so long. It's really, and I honestly don't know. I don't know how you do that. I don't know how you bridge, because you're talking about that gap. It's different for every individual. And so creating this system, I was like, here's what you do. That's not going to work because there's so many different shades of their housability or what experience they have in a kind of a domestic situation.
Right. We just recently, was it a couple of weeks ago, Ms. Jackie, we had an influx of reentry. The reentry population is a whole new, level of services that we need to provide. Some of them coming out of prison. We're not talking about a year in county. We're talking about 25 years they've spent in prison, and now they've gone to this place, and now they're at Harbor House. But they've spent 25 years, and all of their 20s, all of their 30s, they're in their 40s now.
Yeah.
Some are in their 50s. And what do you do, with them? They're having to learn everything. But yeah, that's another challenge that, I think the system is facing. I believe the drug courts and things have gotten their funding cut. I think their funding was cut, so they're scrambling for options for individuals coming out of prison who relapse and those sorts of things. But we just was facing that a few weeks ago where we had probably about 5 or 6 clients who were out of prison.
Do you ever feel at times that you're spread a little? I know you feel like you're spread thin, but do you feel sometimes that you could just we want to deal with alcohol and drug rehabilitation and use trauma-informed therapy to help that. But these other issues are just giant social issues that have been festering for, let's face it, since America was, like taking people that are underserved and don't have access to resources and treating them like less than human is part of our story. We've been doing that for a long, long time in all areas. There are times that you just don't even want to deal with that and would prefer to stay in a lane like drug and alcohol treatment.
So for me, it's unfortunate that we have to deal with it, but it's a part of life, and so we have to just meet the person where they are. If somebody presents themselves and they did 20 years in prison, guess what? You got an alcohol and drug problem. You show up at Harbor House, So we just have to help.
Yeah.
You have to work with what we got. And so, how do we start to, get the person to cut off the lights? That's where our clinical techs come in, go around, check the rooms, hey, person in room 10 didn't cut the lights off, so you remind the person that, hey, cut the lights off. But so that's all of the societal norms or lack of norms is just there. People from the beginning of time have had, issues that nobody wanted to deal with and whatnot. And so we there at Harbor House, and I think that's one of the unique things about Harbor House, that we kind of admit people that don't nobody else want. They don't, like Chris said initially, they don't have the insurance and they can't go anywhere. So, they come to Harbor House and we show them care and concern and love and help them work through their issues and get them where they need to be.
And I think one of the things you brought up about dealing with the other issues outside of that, in order for us to do that, we would have to disconnect from parts of the person.
Yeah, it's not real.
It's just not realistic. A clinician who has a homeless client is never going to not think about, where's my client going to go? They're never not going to not make that phone call, go above and beyond, because you have to, we're treating the whole person, not just pieces and parts of them. I think the key to that is really collaboration, really tapping into our community partners and the resources and knowing what's out there is the key, because of course we can't do it all. We're not a housing provider, that's not what we do, but it doesn't mean we can't make the connection. That is our job, is to make that connection. So really knowing what the resources are, but I don't think there'll ever be a time where a staff member can break the person down into pieces. This is the homeless piece. This is the SUDS. I'm going to deal with this piece and I'll set that part, because it all goes back to their recovery. And without food, clothing, and shelter, you can forget staying clean. It just basic needs are not met, then it's just it's a losing battle when they cannot eat, have a safe place to stay, and clothes on their back. Nothing else matters at that point. If you can't get your basic needs met, I'm not thinking about going to Yana. I'm not thinking about going to a meeting. I'm not thinking about, I'm gonna be late for my wife. I'm not thinking about any of those things. If I can't provide for myself and my family, if I don't have a place to stay, I'm not thinking about anything else because I'm living in the woods right now. That's my focus. Where am I gonna right now? There's a guy at the gas station down the street from where we work, and he sits out there every morning. He's living in the woods. I've been trying to encourage him. Our house is right down the street. We know he have a problem. He don't want to admit it, but he's like, "No, I'm fine. I'm fine living in the woods until it got cold." You know what I mean? So for Harbor House, our individuals, our employees, they're carriers of hope, because even though they say hope is free, faith is free, it's still a huge load to carry when you're carrying addiction. You can't carry it. You can't carry hope when you're carrying that. So Harbor House staff does it for them. We are the carriers of hope for them until they're strong enough. And then we hope once they get that then they can take it out those doors and continue to do that.
Yeah. The Harbor House almost 53 years ago was dealing primarily with alcoholics. And now, at 53 years later, you're dealing with a lot of different stuff. You're dealing with different trauma. Like we're talking about people who are suffering from some trauma, to people who are suffering from dual diagnosis, maybe some mental issues. One of the things that you're using today is MAT, medically assisted treatment. For our listeners who don't know what that is, can you kind of describe what it is and what some of the pros and cons of MAT are?
Right. So medical assisted therapy, it's sort of along the lines, remember when the methadone kind of thing came, they utilized methadone to treat heroin addiction. And what methadone allowed was for individuals to go get the methadone and still be able to function. It blocks the cravings of the heroin, so they were able to continue their normal life, go to work, and those sorts of things. Suboxone is pretty much similar to that. It helps blocks the cravings of opioids, so an individual can go through the day, go to the meetings, and still function normally. And that's the biggest pro, is it blocks the cravings.
Okay.
For that, it can also be used for stimulants as well. It's a primary opioid intervention, but it has been known to be effective for stimulants as well. One of the downsides to it is going to be stigma. You still have individuals that feel like you just substituting one drug for another, just like the whole methadone thing. We get a lot of pushback from courts. Even some sober living won't accept clients who are on Suboxone. And I think that's the biggest con right now, is it's still seen as a negative thing. It's not enough, information out there, not enough awareness to understand. Suboxone has saved many lives. It has saved many lives. It has really helped individuals who would not have been able to stop to actually go through life and not use. So
Is it just used for people who are suffering from an opioid addiction? You mentioned some stimulants. Are we seeing a crossover into alcoholism where they're starting to use it, or is it?
no.
So-
Alcohol, no. That's one of the things that's not used for that.
Okay.
But primarily it's an opioid intervention, but has been known to be effective for stimulants, cocaine,
Yeah.
meth, and things such as that.
So we deal with a lot of people that come in my 12-step work where people are on Suboxone. It's definitely a help to kind of get off the street drugs and do things. But I do see a lot long-term, people start to have some complaints. And they have some complaints of their physical health. I think there's some new lawsuits out about some teeth stuff going on. But the complaints that I hear, like from my friends, are I wake up every morning jonesing. If I'm supposed to be at work at 8:30, or I'm supposed to get up at 8:30 and I sleep till 9:30, I wake up and I'm dope sick, and I don't like that. Another thing I hear is the off-ramp is not made clear. And the off-ramp being like, how do we transition from I'm taking a strip a day to now I'm doing this? What's Harbor House doing to give people the sense of like they are recovering in a upward pattern rather than just like I'm statically going to be on this stuff for the rest of my life?
And I think that's where Dr. Easterlin and his team comes in. He's our MAT kind of guru. He's our medical director. he starts them on the Suboxone, and you have individual once they leave here, they'll continue it on, but I think Doc does a assessment and he makes the determination, okay, it's time to kind of wean them down, and that's all based off medical assessment. We kind of leave that part to him, but I think it's like anything else, tapering off. Like I said, with the methadone, that was the same issue. They felt that the withdrawal from methadone was worse than the withdrawal from the drug of choice, or how long are they going to take this? When are you going to stop doing it? Now, are they dependent on the methadone to get through the day?
Yeah.
So kind of what is the trade-off? I think there's trade-offs to anything that we use,
Right.
whether it's nasal spray. That's why they have those warnings on there. And I think it's going to boil down to client choice. I think it's going to boil down to doctors, guidance. I think gather the information. If you're unsure, then that's where you do your own research. You have to do the research. And sometimes the side effects may be worse than what, they want to deal with. But it all boils down to making a decision based off information, accurate information, as opposed to me listening to this person, because everybody's not affected the same way, So your side effects may be different than mine.
Yeah.
So, we would think that clients and family members, especially family member, would do the research on Suboxone, look at the health benefits, look at the downside of it, speak with the doctor, speak with experts in the field. That's the best kind of thing I would think for anything that you're taking.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, that's when it's really time to work an honest program. If you're having those side effects from that medication, go talk to the physician and tell them, hey, I'm experiencing this and whatnot, and have some candid conversations.
Yeah.
Don't just continue to suffer.
Yeah. And that's because that's what you want to do, is you want to help people recreate their lives and be productive and get back in building families and building
Right.
careers and being sober and not being enslaved to anything,
Right.
whether it's your
Right.
past or your addiction or even medication at times. I can't thank y'all enough for the work that y'all are doing. Y'all are going to continue to do. I hope to have y'all back on. You can come in and just talk about whatever interests you. Having good conversations with people who have their heart in the right place is what Recovery Lab's all about. So thank you so much for coming on. And
Well, thank you for having us.
yeah,
Chris made us.
I know he did. He's good.
He
He's
said,
good
you
at
going.
that. Yeah.
He made us do
Hey,
it.
it's about getting that Harbor House mission out there. So you guys are phenomenal. And David, what we as board members get to witness is everything that Dedria and Jackie have described at work and impacting lives, and it's just incredible to be a witness to.
Yeah. Like I said, Rachel, my wife, I mean, she's my ride or die. She's my everything. She wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Harbor House and what y'all have done.
Yeah, David, I wanted to chime in. We opened the last board meeting, and I walked in, and Barry and I told a story about one of the meetings we had been to, just 2 or 3 days before the board meeting at Yana. And we were sitting there, and in that meeting, and you were in there, 4 different people brought up as they were sharing about their own journey. And,
I remember that.
and their own, and Mike C. and several others had just said it was part of my journey. It was part of my journey. Maybe they came and went. Maybe it was their first treatment or their last treatment or something in between. And I mean that's it. That tells the whole story right there, along with everything that you guys have shared today. So it's a tremendous thing to be a witness to.
Harbor House team, thank you so much for coming on today.
All right, thank
Recovery
you.
Labsters, we'll see you next week. Thanks for tuning in.